Oh, hi, everyone. Hi. How are y'all doing today? Welcome. Okay. All right, chat, let's get into some This is a controversial topic in the world of Star Wars. Let's get into some midichlorians and figure out the science of midichlorians, what exactly they are. I'm going to do a little bit of a review on what they are in terms of the movie. Hilariously enough, I had a clip of this last week. And the clip... Hi, Spectre. How you doing? The clip of this last week I did not play because we didn't get to it. But what I didn't realize is that it was actually not the correct clip. It was it's the same scene when Anakin's like, Master Qui-Gon, what are midichlorians? And it cuts to Qui-Gon sitting midichlorians, and then it says it's a hard drug. And I was like, oh my god, I'm glad I didn't play that clip, because I was, I didn't know it as like a silly clip. I just grabbed the movie clip. I'm like, all right, we're good, and didn't pre-screen it. My mistake. This time it is pre-screened. Let us review midichlorians, and then we'll get into the science behind it. You're a bad boy killing all the bugs? You're all right, Spectre Flight. You're all right, Spectre Flight. I always think of this altered mitochondria. You're not the only one, RPG fan. That's actually the direction that I wanted to go in terms of what they might actually be in science. Versus what they are. There's always so much, like, we're like on this stream, we're trying to extract a little bit of science from Star Wars, right? So we talked about cloning last time. We talked about a couple of other things. Now we actually, so I have modern day examples of like existing lightsabers, droids that are actually helpful. There's a little bit on the Force that we have, robotic arms. So like elements of the movies and how they might be explained by science. That's really angry. It's like a legitimately angry Smikes right there, Chad.
Talking about midichlorians, I've been wondering, what are midichlorians?
Midichlorians are a microscopic life form that resides within all living cells.
They live inside me.
Inside your cells, yes. And we are symbionts with them.
Symbionts?
Life forms living together for mutual advantage. Without the midichlorians, life could not exist, and we would have no knowledge of the Force. They continually speak to us, telling us the will of the Force. When you learn to quiet your mind, you'll hear them speaking to you.
So, half of it, he is not the worst Jedi. He is not the worst Jedi. He is the best Jedi. Hi, Gwen. Oh my god, I almost said hi, midichlorians. Hi, Gwen. And that is Liam Neeson. Actually, Smikes, one would argue that he is probably the best Jedi because he is the ultimate gray Jedi. He teeters the line between both the light and the dark. And if he had not died, I don't think Anakin would have gone down the path of the dark side. Showing that there. Midichlorians against the Empire would have just built a Jedi detector. They didn't need to toss coin tiers, which are, per the universe between episode 3 and 4, Darth Vader was detecting them left, right, and center. Now, a lot of that is no longer canonical, or they did away the canon, but still. Have to be a blood test. So, there is a blood, that's how they detected Anakin's, was testing out his blood. I know, Toss, they undid a lot of the things. But let's talk about what exactly they might be. So I think this is the more scientific element of actually... So if we dissect some of what Qui-Gon said, that there are symbiotic organisms that were living together for mutual advantage. There's essentially another organism inside your cell. That would point to two different genomes. And the two different genomes are, as actually RPG Fanel just talked about, mitochondrial genomes as well as the genomes in your nuclei, and the same thing with chloroplasts and plant cells. And that's probably the closest thing that we have to midichlorian. So let's talk about that tonight to kick things off.
What if I told you that more than 2 billion years ago, some tiny living thing started to live inside another living thing?
That sounds a little bit like midichlorians. What movie they first mentioned? So that was episode 1, Gwen. And they mention it when Qui-Gon tests Anakin's blood. And then during that scene we just played, and it's never mentioned again. Maybe, I can't remember if in one of the cartoons there's a mention of it or not, and there might be some mention in one of the books somewhere, but it feels almost like a throwaway line, Gwen, but I thought it would be a fun thing to explore in terms of the biology behind things.
And never left. And now, the descendants of both of those things are in you. Well, brace yourselves, because I gotta tell you about one of the biggest breakthroughs in the history of life. It began as a chance encounter between two microorganisms, but it ended up making all complex life on Earth possible. And the evidence we have of this momentous event isn't some fossil found in rock, it's found in our very own cells. It may not surprise you to hear that all living things on Earth are made of cells, microscopic structures whose innards are enclosed by a membrane. And scientists classify all life into two main groups, depending on what kind of cells it has.
So we're just giving a little bit of a refresher on the history of life and just the evolutionary stage at which these cells are going to be evolving.
You can either be a prokaryote or a eukaryote. Prokaryotes were the first kind of living things to form on Earth. They first appeared perhaps as much as 4 billion years ago, and they're still around today.
And if we're talking about the theory of Star Wars, if midichlorians are really these really force-sensitive little single-celled life forms, there is the other line in the movie, Gwen, that Anakin Skywalker was conceived by the Force. So it's Shmi Skywalker, his mom, there's no dad, and that it was just these microorganisms that the will of the Force yielded Anakin. That would again suggest that there's some kind of small microorganisms that maybe are the starting, like the first life in the Star Wars universe on these like various planets. As just a scientific aside, yes, it absolutely smikes. It is a biblical reference in there. The mitochondria was slightly different. The cells, they could power capable of a lot more functions. So RPG, a lot of the hypotheses existing today is that the mitochondria has undergone genome loss, meaning that it can no longer now survive outside of the cells, like outside of your cell, but at one point they did have it. So you'd have to look at what the ancestral genetic state is and try to compare it to what it is today and see what genes were lost and what genes were maybe gained. Guys, the doorbell was just rung. I'll be right back, and then we're going to continue this, okay? I'm just going to make sure we get answered. I'll be right back, folks. Yes, so Gwen, the Sith and the Jedi both have the same midichlorians. There's been no differentiation in the story of that being the difference between the two, but rather motives. Their own internal motives drive them to be Sith or Jedi instead of being something different with the midichlorians. But that would have been an interesting theory. You just got home, Debs. I hope you had a great day today, Debs.
In abundance. They're single-celled organisms like bacteria and archaea, and their cells are generally very simple, small with ring-shaped DNA that floats freely around the cell. But you, my friend, are a eukaryote.
So prokaryotes are actually really cool from a structural perspective because the DNA is just free-floating, loosey-goosey. There's not a nucleus that contains the DNA, and so I always just as a little pet question in my head of how you protect that DNA if it's free floating inside the cell. And there's no real answer to that, but I just always was oh, that's really weird of how that happens.
Cell. But you, my friend, are a
Not always a ball, Smikes. Usually it's a circle. And I'm not being facetious on that, because usually ball is described as what we have in our cells, where it's just string wrapped up in a yarn ball. But in prokaryotes, usually it's a circular piece of DNA. So it's very simple in terms of structure, not like our chromosomes that have ends as well and you have telomeres to deal with. It's just straight up circular piece of DNA that you go in and then you can replicate just circularly, and then you have another circular piece of DNA. That's also how we have plasmids in the lab, where you can introduce new elements of DNA to prokaryotes.
Eukaryote. Your cells are bigger and your DNA is...
So these are our cells.
kept inside a nucleus, which is wrapped up in its own membrane. You're also more physically complex than a prokaryote. I mean, I haven't met you, but I'm assuming you are. And all complex forms of life on our planet, plants, animals, fungi, and everything else that you've ever seen, either with your naked eye or with a cheap microscope, are eukaryotes. And they form a single lineage on the tree of life that arose more than 2 billion years ago towards the start of the Proterozoic eon. Needless to say, the appearance of this lineage completely revolutionized the nature of life on Earth.
So we're gonna link it back to how that makes it being like our 100% sure about canon, but is another difference between Jedi and Sith the saber crystals. So not always. Cirque, sometimes they can have different colors, especially there was an episode of, oh, I forget now what it's called. It's this very new one series that just came out on Disney Plus where it demonstrates that Sith don't always have a red saber either. So it's more like, and there's also Sith who've had blue sabers as well, depending on which expanded universe you're dealing with. Those are some differences. The Jedi also have special marrow, like bone marrow. Hi, Tarzan. How you doing, Tarzan? Welcome in.
For the first time, life could become larger than a single cell. This made possible the enormous diversity of living things that we see today. You, me, yeast, bumblebees, blue whales, all of it. So understandably, scientists have puzzled for hundreds of years over what made this revolution possible.
Oh, they're white blood cells? I'm not sure if there would be any reason to why that they would have a unique immune system. I don't know. Well, there are mitochondrial diseases that also affect the immune response. There might be something like that. Saber color based on the rock crystal. It's based on the crystal, but there are some things in the story, Gwen, that suggest that there's a propensity for Jedi to get certain colors versus Sith to get others, and maybe they're attracted to it in different ways, like the Force pulls them towards one, because the Kyber crystals have some Force something. So Gwen, it's hard because they undid a lot of canon, and so you never really know what now they're going towards. I don't know. Hi, Paw Prince. Paw Prince, how are you doing today? Welcome on in. I do like Mace Windu's purple cloth. I'm not gonna lie. This is 8 legs and you have all the colors. No, actually, Grievous only had green and blue Smikes, which is a little disappointing, right? He was not very colorful on that front. You know who'd be a great Grievous character is our tardigrade. We should put lightsabers in his hands. No, he had blue and green quad. Tarzan! Tarzan, thank you for the tier 1 gifts up to Astronomy Show. Thank you, Tarzan. Astronomy Show, please enjoy the ad-free viewing and the emotes made with love.
Look at its little feetsies!
We can go here. General. Grievous. We'll actually look at it. Quoth. See right there, Quoth. He's got green and blue. There you go. See, Quoth! I know it. Hi, Supernatural Rider. Welcome in, Supernatural Rider. How are you doing, Supernatural Rider? Welcome on in, madame. I know a little bit on this, Quoth, even though I'm a little bit of a silly willy. Guys, go check out Lovely and Amazing Supernatural Rider. Hopefully you're doing well, Super. Sith crystals are grown and synthetic, or at least they used to be the canon. So that's true. That used to be the canon, Cirque, and now all of a sudden, per the new lore, they just go and find the crystals the same way that the Jedi find the crystals. But you never know if they're going to add back any more canon, because they have been adding canon and removing it kind of left, right, and center. Very tired. My poor brother's having a bad fever. Oh, I'm so sorry, Super. I hope he feels better soon. We're doing okay. We're just having our Star Wars night part 2, some Star Wars Science tonight.
And around the middle of the 20th century, an explanation started to come together that remains the prevailing theory to this day. It hypothesizes that all eukaryotes are the result of an ancient random act of endosymbiosis.
So again, we are getting to the symbiotic front of things. As Qui-Gon said, they are symbiotes. They live with us for mutual advantage. Same thing of how this happened with eukaryotic cells from prokaryotes. My brother's actually named after a clone trooper, Cody. I'm just guessing, Supernatural. Attack of the Science. I like it, Smikes. Now's the time to ask Star Wars lore, because listen. Gwendolyn P. I do love it very much. Darman. Gotcha, super. Grievous is an exception due to acquiring his sabers from defeated Jedi, I thought. So, Cirque, the new lore is that anyone can wield a lightsaber. That's why Finn can wield a lightsaber as well and then not have anything to do with the Force. It's just how good that you become of it and use it, that has your Force sensitivity. And then, yeah, Grievous didn't make his own. Although, Cirque, I can't remember if there was a expanded universe book where he did make one, because Count Dooku trained him, and so it's a little bit muddied in the Star Wars lore of how Grievous got his lightsabers.
Thinking goes, in the incredibly distant past, some bacteria started living within another larger bacterium. This relationship became symbiotic, where each organism benefited equally from the presence of the other. Over time, the guest and the host in this arrangement became inseparable.
Much like the mitochondria in our cells, or the midichlorians in the Star Wars universe, at least based on the little bit of lore that we have. You don't want to see me with a lightsaber. I tripped on my own sword at the Ren Fair. So maybe... Well, so, Qual, that's the thing. You can fire up the lightsaber. Now, how long you're going to stick around? It's not clear, Qual.
They became one living thing, and the evidence to support this theory can be found in your own cells. Because you're a eukaryote, you have stuff inside your cells that prokaryotes don't have. These structures do specific things, just like your organs do, so they're called organelles, little organs. So cute. And there are two kinds of organelles that are unlike any others. First, eukaryotes almost always have mitochondria in their cells. You probably remember these from biology class or the internet as the powerhouses of the cell.
It's also fascinating to me that everyone says the phrase powerhouse of the cell, and it wouldn't be so cool if it were that everyone who said it were, during the era of the internet, but even before the internet really blew up and we all knew what everyone else was thinking, like everyone already knew that phrase. It's just quite fascinating to me on that front. If you trip on a lightsaber once, Chris TS, you're not wrong. You're not wrong, Chris TS. Not wrong at all, my friend.
Because they create an energy-storing molecule called adenosine triphosphate, or ATP. The second kind are in plant cells, the chloroplast, which use chlorophyll to convert sunlight into sugar. What's weird about these two organelles, mitochondria and chloroplast, is that in a lot of ways they resemble living things, specifically bacteria. For example, early in the 20th century,
Smikes, actually, Anakin tripped over a lightsaber once and lost both his legs. It's like, you could do it twice, but if you're like Anakin, you could lose both once.
biologists discovered that new mitochondria can only form when existing mitochondria split into two, and the same is true for chloroplasts. So cells can't make new ones. The organelles themselves have to basically reproduce. Plus, these organelles are bound in membranes, like bacteria are, and some researchers noticed that mitochondria and chloroplasts just look a lot like bacteria. Specifically, mitochondria closely resemble infectious bacteria called rickettsia in their size and shape. Likewise, chloroplasts kind of resemble cyanobacteria. They both use photosynthesis, and like the bacteria, chloroplasts have an internal membrane, which they use to hold their chlorophyll. All these similarities,
and it just looks, there are also physical similarities as well, like not just like what they're functionally doing, but also just how they're appearing, which I think is really cool. Why is there some kind of safety button so it switches off when you don't hold it? Well, because Cliff, there are parts, Cliff, where even they'll drop the lightsaber from one hand and grab it with the other to then take out a bad guy, like in episode 8. And so, Cliff, if you let it go in trying to do that cool move where you need it to be activated, then you can't, it couldn't happen if you had that kind of weird safety switch on there, you know? I mean, but I get what you're saying, Cliff, but imagine trying to, like, do a duel where you constantly have to have your finger on a button. But if you're pushing the button with the Force, Cliff, are you not focusing too much on pushing the button rather than the fight in front of you, and you're diverting your attention? Put Anakin in the group to regroup all his parts. So I think Smike's the back to tank. They can't regrow bone. This isn't Harry Potter where they can do a spell to regrow bone. The back to tank is more for like non-stem cell material that you can grow on back. And Jar Jar was very overpowered. Without the Force guiding, it would be lethal to try to use a lightsaber, I think. Except if you're Finn, where you're attempted to be, you're set to be a Force-sensitive character, and then you lose your Force ability because it's written away by bad writing. Or the Darksaber, that's right. But the Darksaber also physically looks different. Like the blade itself. You can do away the whole lightsaber thing and push the enemy with the Force. Except, Cliff, if you're fighting another powerful Jedi or Sith, then you can't Force push anyone. You could... but listen, Quath, the reason it didn't work well in Chamber of Secrets is because the Dark Arts professor, Gilderoy Lockhart, was just garbage. Quath the Raven, you know, he wasn't very wise. Quath the Raven no more. He was just a fuddy-duddy. Force sensitivity implies Force guidance without training. It's hard, Chris, of like how much Force do you get with just being sensitive to it versus actually having it, you know? It's weird. Hold on. I heard a button leave, Chris. Let me push this back in. Something nerfed on my end. Being silly.
Don't you like me a little bit?
I don't even like you a little bit.
I heard you like me a little bit.
Maybe just a little bit.
Hi, Big Gaming. Big Gaming, I have no idea if that fixed that camera, but I did hear something jiggle loose. And it did not. But that's okay. That's okay. How you doing, Big Gaming? Guys, if you're not checking out Legendary Big Gaming, Big Gaming is a breathtaking, amazing streamer, content creator, extraordinary game developer. Using the Unity game engine game called Homeward Hound, where you play as a doog, or a dog. And is the single best father ever. Welcome on, Big Gaming. A natural sports person versus trained one. The natural one can do amazing things, but nowhere near the level of fully trained one. But, I know, Chris, but that would suggest maybe everyone has some level of Force sensitivity. It gets murky. It gets murky. Nothing fell off your racing pod? No, Quad. There's some wire that got jiggled loose, because I heard a little thing jiggle, so one of the cameras is not functional, but it's fine, Quath. We're gonna get through it. I'm doing alright, Big Gaming. Did you have a nice dinner? I hope you did. It isn't everything, Chris, but it sounds like there's maybe densities of midichlorians that maybe give you the ability to actually force wield. Because, yeah, if it isn't everything, right, Chris, then maybe there should be differences in it, and then who knows where it's a lot. It's a lot, Chris. It's a lot. It's a lot.
Use photosynthesis, and like the bacteria, chloroplasts have an internal membrane, which they use to hold their chlorophyll. All these similarities were pointed out by early supporters of endosymbiosis, more than 100.
Steak fingers. I hope it wasn't bony, Big Gaming. Mash, like potatoes, creamed corn, and gravy. Big Gaming, that is a very Texan dinner, and it sounds very tasty, my friend. Sounds very, very tasty. Excellent, Big Gaming. We just had our deliver. We ran out of a bunch of stuff, so we ordered some vegetables to be delivered, and so we just got them in. So that is for our dinner. It's quite delicious. Noise. I haven't yet eaten Big Gaming, but I will eat at some point, Big Gaming. Possibly, potentially, maybe, sometimes. Love your face, Big Gaming.
Years ago, but most scientists remain unconvinced. The theory was revitalized in the 60s and 70s by American evolutionary biologist Lynn Margulis, and by the 1980s, most of the scientific community had come around, because there's one more strikingly weird thing about these organelles. Genetic research showed both mitochondria and chloroplasts contain their own DNA that's completely separate from the DNA in the nucleus of the cell itself.
So in theory, the reason they were able to do the sequencing for Anakin, that blood test of testing the midichlorian levels, because again the midichlorians even had a different genome, so they could do this differentiation between host DNA versus the symbiote DNA. At least that's the hypothesis behind it. I Big Gamey, I had a cookie. Big Gamey, and I will eat after the stream. Possibly Big Gamey, probably Big Gamey. I love you, Big Gamey. You too, Debs.
Then in the late 1990s, scientists examined the genomes of mitochondria and chloroplasts, finding that mitochondrial genes are very similar to the genes in bacteria, like rickettsia, and chloroplast genes turned out to be most like those in cyanobacteria. So
they actually, the things that looked similar to the chloroplasts and the mitochondria in terms of function and appearance, if you did the genetic sequencing, they are very similar in terms of sequence as well, which I thought was really cool.
Combination of anatomical and genetic similarity really seem to have no other reasonable explanation. Mitochondria and chloroplasts must be the descendants of formerly free-living bacteria that somehow got stuck in our cells. But how did they get there? Well, no one's sure. It may have been that 2 billion years ago, a host cell was trying to eat a guest cell, but the eaten cell just stayed intact. Or maybe the guest cell took up residence as parasites. Or it could have been some sort of symbiosis that benefited both hosts and guests from the start, like the gut bacteria living inside all of us.
So it's kind of wild we don't yet know today. RPG Fandle. You can tell from Big Gamey's comment he's not Texan because he said MASH. And mash is a Briticism, like bangers and mash, which is not a Texan thing. Texans will say mashed potatoes. So you can actually see in the comment, RPG Fandle, that while it seems on the surface a little bit Texan, if you look at the dichotomy of the words, he's clearly British. And very handsome as well. Maybe one of the symbiotic aspects of midichlorians would be the host spreading from its source evolution to other areas plant. So that's the other thing too, Chris, is that if we're talking about midichlorian evolution, did it start on one planet? Does this suggest, Chris, that in the Star Wars galaxy, all life originated on a single planet and then spread somehow via the midichlorians? Like, because I can't imagine a scenario where they independently evolved on all these planets at the same time to create life, right? So there must have been something else there. I know Astronomy Show, panspermia is feasible, but given how it's like on all these planets and the being a Jedi is not limited to a single species, it makes it a little bit more complex. It is fruitless, Smikes, but I think it's still fun to analyze how the science could happen, and why where the theory falls apart on a scientific level. Midichlorians spread it once it fused with a space-faring race. Maybe, possibly. They really want to know it all? It depends, Gwen, on who you ask. There's some fans that'll just get angry about everything, and others who will eat up anything. And then there's the in-between where it's like, you're a little bit discerning. You're like, this is kind of cool, but maybe it's not always my cup of tea.
We just don't know. What we do know is that the longer the relationship lasted, the more dependent on each other the guest and host became. Over time, the ancestors of mitochondria stopped behaving like independent organisms.
And this is kind of cool. So this is a scanning or a transmission electron micrograph of mitochondria. And you can see here there's internal folds. And those internal folds inside the mitochondria actually allow the electrons to move in between the different layers, producing energy and producing ATP. So that structure right there, it's even now, if you do a TEM, transmission electron microscope image, it's a slice through samples. You can look inside cells, and the mitochondria always looks something like this. Like, it's a darker ring. You see there's a circular membrane around it, and there's these internal components as well. And even, like, Lita and I did experiments doing this on a brand new cell type, and we found that this particular cell type actually split, and the split cell type was full of mitochondria and RNA, but no nucleus. And then the original cell had a giant nucleus, and as well as it has the mitochondria. So you can readily identify them just based on the structure and the colors here on this image. And again, these images are always black and white, but you can see different color densities of it. Get down with the ATP. Christina, if they were catered to the fans of Senate arguments, they should cater more to fans of biology. But RPG Fandle, did you not know that Chris Diaz is the Senate?
and became ATP factories. Likewise, chloroplasts became little solar-powered sugar factories. They were no longer separate living things, they were part of the cell. Okay, so two microbes that bumped into each other managed to change the course of history. That's weird enough. But what's even more amazing is that this seems to have happened at least 3 times in Earth's history. The first time it happened was when some prokaryote got stuck in another cell and eventually became mitochondria, making the origin of the eukaryotes. This probably happened at least 2.4 billion years ago.
You're my density. Hugh, are you quoting Back to the Future? Because if you are, Hugh...
What do you think?
I think. What was that?
Well done, Hugh. 3 times in 6 billion years seems doable. It does. Yeah, I mean that's not a crazy metric. Is the show Dangerous Game for? I have no idea, Cirque.
Because the oldest fossils of eukaryotes, masses of fungal cells found in South Africa in 2017, are that old. But then this phenomenon happened a second time when cyanobacteria set up shop inside some eukaryotic cell and eventually became chloroplasts, which in turn made plant life possible. This happened at least 1.6 billion years ago, the age of the earliest known photosynthetic plant-like things, red algae. But maybe the most strange occurrence happened only recently, by which I mean some 450 million years ago.
Guys, before we get into what the most recent one is, please go follow our friend Daybreak Stations, aka Daybreak Studios, who is actually streaming right now.
Hello there.
Who's actually streaming right now, folks. Go check out Daybreak Stations. Hi, Daybreak.
When yet another lineage of eukaryotes swallowed up cells of red algae. This event marked the origin of the group that includes brown algae, like kelp, and because of it, kelp cells contain the ancestral remains of a red algae cell, with chloroplasts inside of that.
So that's the wild one to me too, and it's even more demonstrating of this like endocytosis that we saw, because inside of these kelp cells, there's the red algal cells, but you can actually see that there's much more structure in those red algal cells versus there are like in just the regular chloroplasts that you see. So maybe if we fast forward, I don't know, 300 million years into the future, maybe they'll lose more of the structure inside those red algal cells and they'll actually become more and more like the chloroplast and mitochondria that we know today. You got it, Spikes. Hello, Spikes! You're asking me how I feel about the midichlorians. Well, so Spikes, in the Fat Antonia, we have midichlorians. Midichlorians give you the ability to process information and to produce data and science and fact. It's very, very powerful. If not very, very scary sometimes, Spikes. I very much love having these, and the midichlorians, they speak to me. Like, they speak the truth, and they make the peace some other way. It's very true and very fact. Spikes, thank you for asking the question, Spikes. Yes, it's very true, very fact. May the force be with you, Spikes. Ah! Pear just has the answer, Spikes. I don't know what to tell you. Thank you, Professor Spikes.
So endosymbiosis and the origin of eukaryotes that it caused is a big deal in the story of life on Earth. Now don't get me wrong, prokaryotes are awesome. They're still the most numerous and diverse organisms on Earth, and they've managed to exploit just about every environment on the planet. But only eukaryotes have special organelles that provide them with energy, and these little engines have allowed us to grow bigger and more complex.
So before mitochondria were symbiotes, they produced ATP for just from themselves, and now they produce much more of it and gets stolen by the host cell. So that's, Cliff, I think that's the difficulty of actually interpreting it, because we don't know how much gene loss they underwent. So if they underwent a certain amount of gene loss, then you can maybe pull it back in time and figuring out what they were at that original time. And we don't know what all the genes were lost. I think that may very well be influencing, Cliff, what exactly they were doing before they got symbiosed in the original cell, or in like now the host cell. Because was ATP originally something that they wanted, Cliff, like that it was beneficial for those cells, Was it a byproduct of something? Like, what exactly was the original function of ATP? Right? Like, because it's weird, Cliff, if they're just making it for themselves, right? RPG, have a good one, RPG. Hi, Nelf. Welcome on in. Welcome in, Nelf. So a lot of it is just there's not enough genomics.
In dreams, one is not tethered by earthly limitations.
At this stage, Cliff.
What does that mean?
Come.
To hypothesize what's the original, like, evolutionary state of the mitochondrion or of the chloroplast. Like, how much was lost and what were their original functions? Because that would be my big question on that front. Hi, Traveling Tater. Welcome in, Traveling Tater. The Traveling Tater, we're talking some Star Wars science done, including but not limited to, as we're laughing at and having a good time about, is midichlorians and mitochondria and chloroplasts and how that works.
Forming the visible, multicellular life that we know today. Usually we look to the fossil record to understand the story of our origins, but maybe the most important story of all is fossilized within our own cells, and the cells of everyone you've ever met and every living thing you've ever seen.
So I have one more cool video on, like, the microscopic organisms of the midichlorians. So let's check that out. There's a really pretty image series of microscopy in this. So I thought y'all would enjoy it. We watched this series before. It's The Journey to the Microcosmos. It's also narrated by Hank Green, who is the SciShow leader. Hi, Bean. Guys, if you're not checking out Celestial Bean on everything, like, right, Celestial Bean, amazing artist extraordinaire. Go follow Miss Bean. Bean, I am very sad that we're not going to be seeing each other this weekend, Bean. It doesn't feel right, Bean. It feels almost unnatural, Bean. I feel like we should be hanging out with each other on Saturday. Bean, how are you? Lovely stream today. As always, guys, please go follow Bean. She's on her partner Poosh.
Bullet the science guy. Bullet the science guy.
SciAnts rules.
Bullet the science guy.
SciAnts is a partner on Twitch. With lovely white Lita.
Bullet the science guy.
And please go. She made that as well. She made that beautiful video. Miss Bean, Quaff. A lot of what Bean does is beauty that you didn't know that you needed in your life, including her coloring book. Quaff, if you did not purchase her coloring book and you need to relax a little bit and just enjoy life, Carter, first time chatter coming in here and cheering biddies. Thank you so much. Welcome into the colony. I hope you're doing very, very, very well. Thank you for that support. How are you doing today? We're talking about some Star Wars science. We're jumping into some midichlorians as well. Listen, Gwen. Gwen, we do miss Debs. It's kind of scary when Debs isn't here, Gwen, because it's like, what do we even do? Bean, I hope you had a great day today. Lovely stream as always, ma'am. Thank you so much for being here. I love your face. Again, Bean, I'm sorry we won't be hanging out tonight. Or not tonight. Well, tonight we are hanging out. Saturday. Makes me a little bit sad. No sorries, Debs. I feel like I need to nerf that comment. Oh my god, I nerfed the comment. Gwen! Gwen, thank you for the tier 1 gifts up to Gwen, to Debs! Debs, please enjoy the ad-free viewing and the emotes made with love. And please thank the lovely Gwendolyn P. Catch it? Yes, TwitchCon. Absolutely, Bean. Absolutely, Bean. We will catch each other at the TwitchCon, and we might hug each other, if that's okay with you. I've already... Chad, if you don't know, where I'm hanging out with Andrew, possibly NMD, Schmakeys, Thug Shells, towards night this Saturday, and Thuggy and I have already agreed that we're gonna... Well, I'm gonna pass out first, and she's joking that I'm also gonna pass out. I'm like, she's not gonna pass out. I'm gonna pass out and just die right there on Towards Night's floor when I meet all these amazing cool people. I get to meet Riles. Is Riles gonna stab me? Or is that just a silly willy thing? I don't actually know. A Twitch mini, it's very mini. Big Gaming might even be there. Who knows? Big Gaming might be there. Guys, one of the leaders of that will be Thug Shells. Guys, go together. I love you, Big Gaming. But actually, it was funny. Andrew was like, where does Big Gaming live? Is he close by? And I'm like, oh, no, he's not close at all. And he's like, dang. It was very sad. It was very sad. You're crying, Debs. The silly willy thing. Okay, good. As long as it's just a silly willy thing, I'm okay with it. Bean, when he's come in a couple of times, and he like stabs SciAnts, and it's like, I didn't know the context, Bean, when he did it in this chat, and I was like, oh, that's very violent. And then now I'm like, okay, it's fine. It's just Riley. It's fine. Don't mean no. Bit game, you're not upsetting anyone. It was upsetting in the sense of everyone wants to hang out with you, Bit Gaming. That's all it is. It's not. Come on, Bit Gaming. Is it not a cult, but be called? Be careful. It's not a cult. It's not a cult, Smikes. Just like this is also not a cult. What?
One of us. One of us. One of us. One of us.
I gave him an inflatable knife. Okay, so if at TwitchCon he's running around with like a giant inflatable sword or a knife, that would be hilarious, Bean. I'm all for it. I'm all for it, Bean. I'm all for it, Bean. He's called himself nautical. No, that's a nautical term, Mikes. Possibly, potentially. Guys, midichlorians. Midichlorians. Oh yeah, Bean, we're doing some more StarWars Science tonight. We're focusing right now on midichlorians, of how the correct, like in actual biology, what is it the closest thing to and how it would have evolved. Obviously, it's the name mitochondria, and chloroplasts are the closest thing based on the science that we know of the midichlorians. StarWars. Indeed. StarWars indeed. Colony cults. I mean, Quaff, it's a lot of... No, you Humbler John! You stop that, Humbler John. You stop that right now, and you get shouted out right now, Humbler John. Maker and Crafter Extraordinaire right there. Go check out Humbler John! Spikes. Oh my god. So Gwen, this is Journey to the Microcosmos. They do a lot of microscopy, and we've watched a bunch of their videos in the past. This is not a Star Wars produced video as far as I'm aware.
Did you ever hear the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise? I thought not. Well, to make a long story short, Darth Plagueis was a Dark Lord of the Sith who was so powerful that he could actually use the Force to influence midichlorians to prolong someone's life in...
Which actually is not crazy, because again, we talked about mitochondrial diseases. Smikes, we do know what is inside a thug juice. Let me get you the recipe. Hold on. Chat, Smikes is curious about thug juice. One moment. Oh my goodness, Smikes. What are we going to do with you? It's alright. He needs the recipe. He needs the recipe. No, I'm going to go with the official one. Debs, I'm going with the official one, okay? This is what... hold on. This is what Thuggy's Nightbot says. It told me right now. That's what I got right now. That's what I got right now. Now I know now it changes. Debs, I love the changes that there are. But I had to bring that out. Yes, you cannot despair any of this. No further spikes.
Definitely, or even create new life from nothing. Now, we're of course not the ones to say whether or not that's actually possible, and even if it was, we certainly wouldn't want to be the ones to teach you how to do it. The dark side of the Force is a pathway to many abilities. Some, including us here at Journey to the Microcosmos, consider to be unnatural. But what we can teach you is more about midichlorians, those powerful... Midichlorians are sentient, microscopic organisms that reside inside each and every living cell of your body, and it's believed they originated at the wellspring of life, a mystical world located in the center of the galaxy. Over thousands of years, we have come to depend on midichlorians just as they have come to depend on us. We have developed a symbiotic relationship.
So these microscopy images that we're seeing are all examples of prokaryotes that we talked about earlier, and then the eukaryotes that acquire them. So those are the mitochondria and chloroplasts that are acquired via endocytosis, which again absorbing one cell into the originator cell, and that's why they become symbiotic. As Cliff pointed out, how we then utilize their ATP production in them is a little strange because we just don't know. But it's really fascinating of how it works. You quack me up because it's foul? What the duck indeed, Cirque.
We are two life forms living together. Well, actually, we are way more than just two life forms. A person's midichlorian count is determined not by the number of midichlorians in their body, but by the number of midichlorians per cell in their body. And the average person's midichlorian count is around 2,500, which means they have about 2,500 midichlorians packed into each one of the trillions of cells in their body. If you're curious about your own midichlorian count, the easiest way to figure that out is with a simple blood test. For most people, though, knowing their midichlorian count isn't all that important. You can lead just as healthy a life with a count of 1,500 as you can with a count of 7,000. Personally, I'm at about 3,700, for those of you who might be wondering.
And Gwen, obviously there's a little bit of silliness here, Gwen, of like what they're talking about, but they are highlighting some microscopy that utilizes and demonstrates these principles. That I have the body of a movie star, all my clothes are XXXX. I don't know what that means, Cirque. Artistic license, yes. Astronomy show, yeah.
When you start to get to counts closer to 10,000, well, that's when things start to become interesting. You see, the higher your midichlorian count is, the more likely you are to be able to connect with the Force, that energy field created by all living things, a field that surrounds us and penetrates us and binds the whole frickin' galaxy together. And for those people with midichlorian counts around 10,000, the chances of being able to harness and use the Force are so high that if their skills are discovered at a young enough age, they have a good chance of being trained to become a Jedi.
So there are different cells with different densities of mitochondria. So that's kind of where this video is getting. There's also different cells with different densities of chloroplasts. Some are better at photosynthesis than others. And so that's the connection that we're trying to make here. Now, again, this video is put out by the Journey to the Microcosmos, but it is a spoof. It actually was their April Fool's Day video, but they are still showing some real beautiful microscopy, and there's still biological principles that we can take from this video series and just like apply it, like the mitochondria, the chloroplast, to the Star Wars argument, which is again what we're doing tonight.
In fact, all of the samples we're looking at today come from the collections stored in the archives at the Jedi Temple on Coruscant. This sample here was taken from Jedi Master Bala Rapal when he...
They were off the charts astronomy show, and Obi-Wan said even higher than Master Yoda's, but what we don't know astronomy show is on the ship where they did the test. It's not entirely clear if their equipment was just not that good. Like, would it have been able to test and read Yoda's midichlorian count or not? Because it was just a random, like, Naboo starfighter, right? So they may or may not have the tech to do it. The number of mitochondria cannot increase, or midichlorians cannot increase or decrease. So it seems like it's genetically determined, Gwen, at least in the Star Wars universe. So you're not going to get like an artificial increase. At least that seems to be maybe some flavor of it. It's a sampling error. Astronomy show that would be terrible. It was like he's not actually the chosen one. He just they did the wrong collection and they did an error. Like maybe it should, like on Tatooine people, if you take a sample from their finger, it's actually like denser in the midichlorian count than it is anywhere else in the body, and it's just a sample bias. That would be hilarious, actually, astronomy show. That's how they explained that why Rey was actually the one to take out Palpatine and not Anakin. That's how they fixed the entire messed up like timeline. Why does your cat drool so much? The same like NMD Noodle drools a lot, and they're both perfect. Marley's perfect.
He was just 3 years old, and it shows that he had a midichlorian count of just over 11,000, putting him somewhere around Jedi Master Plo Koon, but far below that of Anakin Skywalker, who has a count of well over 20,000. Now obviously, not all of us get to be Jedi, and you shouldn't feel like bantha fodder if your midichlorian count is lower than average. People with lower midichlorian counts have been known to be force sensitive in the past, even if it's not quite as common. But looking at the bigger picture, we must remember that without midichlorians, life could not exist. And without them, we would have no knowledge of the force at all.
So Bit Gaming, I think the way they did the video is they're quite clever. They have pulled in a lot of Star Wars lore and even the language behind it. And again, they don't actually go into like the depth of the mitochondria that we just talked about, as well as like the chloroplast and the endocytosis that happened. But it kind of frames the midichlorian argument where, again, I'm pretty sure Lucas has said, no, it's not based on mitochondria. I can't figure out what else it was based off of. Because I think it's, like, it sounds really similar. Number one, which is kind of like, okay, so what exactly are you trying to do here? But I think it was, that's my suspicion that is in fact that's the case of what's going on. That's what my suspicion is. All right, so that's topic number one, y'all. Are y'all ready for topic number two? I'm thinking let's look onto some droids, because there's a whole thing of robotics. When I was researching this topic, I didn't know that such robots existed, and it's just a really cool series of robots. Now, obviously, I am not a robotics expert. I am not an engineer, and I'm not going to pretend to be tonight. So some of the things that we're going to be going into now are outside of my wheelhouse in terms of expertise, but I thought it'd be fun to kind of just appreciate the technology that's happening in the world and kind of make some similarities between what we see in Star Wars. Hi, Marley! For those who don't know, there was a Droids TV show all about Star Wars droids. With this unique singing. And they did get in the actual voice actor from 3PO. Gwen, it was terrible. Made no sense. but I had some VHS tapes of it. It's just so, it's so goofy. But I had it on, Boba Fett was in there as well. It was just very strange, Gwen. But I was like, you know what? I bet not everyone remembers this. I was like, let's just play the intro for it. But let's learn about some cool droids. So there are droids that are helping us on a lot of our day-to-day lives that we haven't maybe dealt with a lot because we're not in the correct field, or they're because we just haven't been exposed to it. There are a lot of robotics coming into healthcare, which makes it very much feels like some of like the health droid in episode 3 that helped give Padme give birth with to Luke and Leia that Padme delivered, like a delivery droid. This is one that's called Moxie the Robot, and this one's quite a cool droid that actually zips around a hospital and helps patients and doctors. If it's on there, Cirque, please let me know. Fan-made cringe. But as a kid, I enjoyed it, which I know I shouldn't say bit gaming. I did enjoy it though as a kid. Hi, Pipcat! Welcome on, Pipcat. How you doing, Pipcat? We're talking some StarWars Science tonight, Pipcat. We just finished talking about midichlorians, and now we're talking about droids. Welcome on in, Pipcat. I don't know how I feel about it having a face. But this is at being like, so it's a nurse assisting robot is the goal of it, and they're actually using it at the neurology unit. So in particular for neurosciences, and it's supposed to do quick acting things. So like going and getting specimens, dropping them off, getting like various items for patients and nurses. So it's supposed to be like the stuff that nurses aren't supposed to like nurses, like instead of just the patient care, like they're not playing fetch, like to get items. Instead, these droids will help them so the nurses can focus solely on their patients for it. Huge contention right now in the nursing field with robots being used rather than nurses for patient care. Oh, so Grimly, have they expanded?
Together,
Kixie!
the galaxy.
Call me Kixie. Thank you for the resub. Kixie at 19 months. Call me Kixie. How are you doing today? Welcome on in. Kixie, thank you for your ongoing support. How are you today? How is your evening? We're talking StarWars Science tonight, Kixie. Hello, Kixie. Enjoyed Knight Rider as a kid and then tried to rewatch 2 years ago. Super cringe and I couldn't do it. See, Gwen, isn't that sad? That it's just, Gwen, like, we lose the love of things that we grew up with because all of a sudden it becomes cringy. Like, I wish we didn't lose that beauty of, like, we're going back to watching a show that we really enjoyed and all of a sudden, like, we can't. Big Gamey, what is Droids, Big Gamey? Is it like this, or is it something totally different? Magnum PI, I do not remember. I never actually, tactics, don't get mad, I never watched Magnum PI. Columbo aged well, though. Had a robot at the hospital my dad and I worked at. It could deliver meals and all. Apparently, every now and then, it took a spill down the stairwell. Oh, no. Oh, wait, oh, Big Gamey. Sorry, Bit. I thought sometimes Big Game and Disney puts out like Star Wars additional product, like looking at like the making of Mandalorian, like all these various things. And so I thought maybe they did like a special on droids. That's interesting that there is that one is there. It's tagged as vintage. Okay, so it's like the original thing, Bit Gamey. Okay. Bit, if you watch it, will you let me know if it holds up? Because, yeah, I'm just now curious, Big Gamey, if it holds up. I don't think I'll watch it, Big Gamey, but if your morning coffee, you decide to turn it on, I'd be very curious.
Moxie is a teammate. She's here to actually relieve some of the pressure of task and the hunt and gather that we all have to do all day that takes our time away from the patient.
it seems like it's a good idea. Grimly mentioned there is some fighting going on between it, and I can see that happening because, like, as Grimly points out, if there's all of a sudden like this disconnect between getting rid of nurses versus just augmenting and helping them, that could be a very big difference that, you know, I wouldn't want to go down that path either. But yeah, so that's maybe one possibility. Not sure that brave. You're very brave, Big Gamey. A Baymax? I would love a Baymax, Kixie. You look into robotics. Last I saw Tesla bot, and that was embarrassing. This one works pretty well, it looks like. I'm assuming the midichlorians are a race everyone knows about in the world of Star Wars. The way you interact with the Force through the midichlorians, they are sensitive to energy, symbiotic relationship with the cells. So, astronomy show, it sounds like mitochondria. Of that, it sounds very much like mitochondria. So that explanation that Lucas gave from astronomy show there, it sounds very much like what we just chatted about in terms of like how the biology of these things might work. So that's what I'm going to defer to. Then it's just pretty much mitochondria. Hi, Keladon K. Trying to say I'm a hobby roboticist, and Star Wars droids are miles ahead of what we have currently. Oh, for sure. Yeah, Keladon. These droid examples that I'm giving are not at all yet to the level that what we see in Star Wars. But I thought maybe they're somewhat similar, and they would be kind of cool to compare of how close they are in these worlds. And I thought that would be kind of cool to talk about. So that's why, Keladon, we have these up. I hope that's okay, Keladon.
Diligent Robotics of Austin designed Moxie to perform routine tasks in a clinical setting.
We really need to understand the workflows of these units. We need to understand, well, what do nurses do? How do they do it? And how do we think about Moxie fitting into those workflows?
Her little voice, you know, when she passes you and says hello, and her eyes, she does seem to have a personality. We don't think of her as a thing, it's Moxie.
During a month-long pilot, Moxie stocked patient rooms, removed dirty linens, and took samples to the lab.
Which is really cool. Sleep well, Debs. Debs, go get some sleepies, Debs. Debs, go get some sleepies. Sleep well, Debs.
Almost 30% of our task during our shift is to fetch things. If you're in the patient room doing something, oh, okay, they need an extra blanket, it's not there, you need to step up. But at this time, all you need to do is press your voice over button, call for Moxie team. It responds.
So we anticipate.
Volcano Doc. Hi, Volcano Doc. Guys, if you like science, if you like Volcano Doc, we're talking Star Wars Science tonight. If y'all want to hear about Mustafar, and in addition to Mount St. Helens, by the way, lovely stream today, Volcano Doc. I was lurking on you, ma'am. I was lurking hard on you, ma'am, when we raided over to Melissa. Guys, go check out Volcano Doc. Again, full-life, real-life professor of volcanology. Can tell you all about Mustafar. Can tell you all about volcanoes. Can tell you all about fancy things in the world. Please go follow the lovely and amazing Volcano Doc. Wasn't that in... Oh, the stalking? Yes, that did happen. Star Wars, a droid brain can be small enough to fit inside a large brooch to be able to be sentient. In our reality, processing power... Oh, yeah, but chips are always shrinking, Keladon. They're always shrinking in sizes. So, maybe we'll be getting close there. Have a good one, Debs. Sleep well, Debs. Sleep well, Debs. But Volcano Doc, I hope you had a great day today. You were stopping on. No! Volcano Doc!
The galaxy.
Volcano Doc, thank you for the resub. You are the most amazing, in fact, Volcano Doc. Most of you, Volcano Doc. Thank you for the resub, ma'am. Thank you for that ongoing support. Welcome the heck in. Model doesn't need to change at all. You can run a super simple one on Arduino. Oh, very cool, Keladon. Yeah, Volcano Doc, we're doing, we talked about midichlorians and what they might most likely be. They're very similar. We talked about the biology broken down. Astronomy show gave us a Lucas quote. Basically, they're just mitochondria and chloroplast and endocytosis and symbiosis happening, is the conclusion we came to. Now we're talking in just, I don't have any expertise, obviously, in robotics, but we're just talking about some cool robots that are kind of giving us Star Wars vibes. And that's kind of I think that's a fun way of going about it. Yeah. If there's a hype train, there is my entrance. Oh, no, actually, you can't do that, Debs, because it's not on. I never turn it on until that starts, because otherwise people can front load entries and not be here to collect. I got you, Debs. Okay, it was astronomy show. Yeah, I was hanging out with Volcano Doc today. She always has lovely streams. I recognize the shape of English letters. You can run AI detection. Very cool, Celadon. Very cool. And hi, Iowa you welcome on in.
That this will give us better insight into a couple of things: how nurses feel that they spend their time in a given shift, but also what time we could give back to our patients. So how this could potentially impact patient satisfaction, patient outcomes.
Yeah, Coffee, there's a lot of I can see the debate about this pretty easily, because how like nursing shortage, but is it going to replace nurses, right? That's not their goal, but I know that's always the fear about this. But maybe they can do the task that the nurses, their job is to take care of the patient, and it's, I felt Coffee Rocks when we were in the hospital so bad, because I'm like asking the nurse, to be like, could you get us these items? And she has much better things to do than to get us these random items. But if there was a robot there to do it, I think it'd be much easier, because they do so much for the patients. Like the nursing team we had with little baby Alona, hats off, they were amazing. And it's I would not want to be without them. But for getting a blanket or these little things, I wouldn't mind if it was a droid, and that way the nurses have more time with their patient. To me, but I would love to see, but I have a cat son on me. They do like to hang out with you. NMD. It's because you're amazing.
And the overall experience within the hospital.
Patients are intrigued by Moxie.
They have seen at the door side, they will ask us, hey, what is that? Is that a robot? It's really funny and interesting the way how they look at it, but they are also happy that we are working with it.
So it's been really amazing to look at what we're doing here in the very first phase, very first hospital deployment of a care-assistive robot, and what the future could hold. Because just the impact that we've seen for our team within this last month, it's amazing what we could potentially give to healthcare in the future.
She's really created with my team a sense of unity as we look at, what can Moxie do for us?
So we're just going to go through a couple of cool droids, and I thought the Moxie droid was really helpful because it's, again, helping in terms of healthcare, but there's a lot of technology that goes into it, right? There's going to be detection of where it's going. There has to be a built-in map. There has to know the different items to pick out and how to pick them out and when to bring them, and there's a whole lot of factors at play in terms of the programming. So it's really advanced and really cool, and so let's see where else droids can also be helpful. Let's do another robot. So these are all cool robots that I was finding that I think were really, really cool. This is one. This is a robot that you can actually build at home. Yes, no disassembly. No disassemble number 5. Years ago, I'm going to make some robots reads. I'm going to play some video game set. So actually, Fortuitous Traveler, this robot, this TJ robot, is something that you're able to buy, and you can actually use this. It's called the Raspberry Pi, so it's also almost like a mini Linux computer on a chip, and you can program it to respond to emotional states. And this is kind of the tech that would go into maybe those food delivery droids if they had some kind of aggression towards them.
Hello, I'm TJ Bot. I can monitor Twitter for sentiment related to a keyword you pick. When people are happy, I shine yellow. When they are sad, I shine blue.
And so it's fundamental detection and learning, but that would be, it's a cool initiator there. Pi1 original noise. NMD, listen, I learned about Raspberry Pis from when I was doing a rotation in graduate school at a bioinformatics lab. And this programmer started telling me about Raspberry Pis, and I'm like, look, man, you need to back up 4 steps because I think you're talking about Pi. And I'm like, I know you're not talking about Pi. I know it's something tech, but in my mind, I'm not going to jump over the loops and figure it out. I need you to tell me about what this is. And so it's basically this tiny computer on a chip. Not a potato chip, but like a circuit chip. Big Gamey, sir, you're always being papa. Super papa, even Big Gamey. Is it amazing small enough? It is. Astronomy show. Yeah, it's really amazing. Edible pie? What about mathematical pie? NMD.
I also shine red when they are angry, purple when they are afraid, and green when they express disgust. Let's watch how I am assembled.
There's the Raspberry Pi NMD. So there's your human hand comparison. Hi, Pragmatic Entropy. Everything is a tiny computer on a chip, basically what I did for 20 years. Very cool, Pragmatic. How you doing today? Welcome in. We're doing some Star Wars Science, and one of the topics is droids. So it's actually the whole, I'll post the video on, love your face, Pragmatic. I'll post a video on the Discord, but this video has a link. Actually, it's an open source, like instruction manual on how to assemble this kind of little robot and how to get it to react to those emotions and have the lights light up different colors, which is really neat. I can't eat math. Actually, NMD, you eat math every day. You know why, NMD? Because your food costs money, which is numbers, which is math. Ipso facto, at the root of it all, you're eating math daily. Fortuitous, yes, fortuitous traveler. Yes, food also has angles, NMD. So there's cute angles, and there's also obtuse angles, and food is full of them. And also the golden ratio, I'm sure, is located in some of the foods that you eat. Ones make like, it's cool, Pragmatic. It's cool. But Alexander, while it's free for you, it's not free for them. Someone paid for it. NVIDIA Jetson Nano SBS Compact AI for home robots. Nice. Pie more than pie. All the pies are made. Recipe. Yep, recipes are math. So this in the video, they give you a link and you can download the instructions and put it into your little droid. Oh yeah, viscosity instructions. Yeah, heck yeah, fortuitous. What I read is Star Wars in the title. Yes, TMK, we are doing some Star Wars Science tonight. Right now we're focusing on some droids. Welcome on in. So software update for your droid. StarWars is exactly correct. I think it's most places, sir. I don't think it's on everything. Quick update, and now you have the reaction robot, which is kind of neat. Oh, thank you. Yeah, thank you, Pragmatic. Big Gamey let me know. Big Gamey's in my ear sometimes, and he let me know. Thank you, Big Gamey. But that's just one example of another droid that you can program at home. Introducing. Now this droid, again, we're just going through a couple of different ones. This one is a different appearing droid than what we saw delivering food, but this one is utilizing a lot of movement behavior as well, and more in the AI vision. It's also actually powered by the Raspberry Pi, the same little chip that we learned about and talked about in the previous video, which is kind of neat, I think.
The arrival of High Wonder Puppy Pie. Powered by Raspberry Pi, it is an AI quadruped robot based on ropes and supports Python programming. It is truly a developer platform for AI quadruped robot. Deep-seated in the puppy pie body are high-performance coreless servo to supercharge the robotic strength. With clever, kinematic, and structural design, puppy pie legs movement angles are fully optimized for nimble locomotion.
Why do much? Why so much? Oh, I'm not sure why. They had the wheeling one going pretty well, though, but this one's pretty neat. The human body in a science way I'm extremely interested in a deeper level. Sometimes fortuitous. It depends on the topic that we're chatting about.
We can have an immediate control on puppy pie with its app.
Yeah, so you can actually buy one of these.
Based on inverse kinematics algorithm, puppy pie's postures are continuously variable.
Mostly fortuitous travel. My expertise is in insect neuroscience and genetics, but some of the principles very easily go into human biology as well. So there have been plenty of deep dives that we've done on human biology, but it's not necessarily the gross body, like everything at once, but like a particular, like the endocrine system for a question, or heart cells, or organoids, which you can grow in a dish, and that's like influencing, like, you know, modulating and like demonstrating what an organ growth can look like. So there's a lot of those elements that we'd be doing. Yeah, astronomy, so they've come a long way. Influence on our biology, consider the reverse knees and ours. Probably pragmatic, yeah, in terms of building, which is kind of neat to have that comparison.
Upper computer software or wireless controller provides you with endless stimulating experience.
I remember when these originally came out, they were not at all used for a toy. Right, they were like a very, very big technological advancement. It is endless epoch. Interested in the rhythm of fluids carried by fluids. Oh, gotcha. So fortuitous, probably one of those deep dive redeems would be, because that's not something that I can easily rabbit hole on. I'd have to do some research on the topic before we can do a stream on it. So there is a redemption for a deep dive for it as well. Carry bombs from war zones. It was different. I think it was this one, Ariella, because of the feet, so it can move around. Like it can't be the one with the wheelie ones. No. Fortuitous. It's so the deep dive redeem is not instant. If you hit the deep dive redeem, we take the topic, and then I take time to research the topic, and then we have a whole stream on it. Sometimes we have a whole bunch of streams on it. Because fortuitous, one of the deep dive redeems turned into 6 streams. And it's just to make sure that I can research it and get you the appropriate answers, because if I don't know offhand, I don't want to tell you the wrong things, because that's inappropriate of me to do. It's also misleading and bad science, so we never would want to do that.
Puppy Pie has high level of perception to its environment.
Listen, Coffee Rocks, I can't help it if you're breathtaking.
Equipped with high-definition wide-angle camera, it can identify objects and perform many amazing functions, such as autonomous obstacle avoidance, label identification, face recognition, and many more.
So
over
again,
and above,
while this looks silly, these are the same principles that are being placed into that little car zipping around as well. Right, the food delivery, of learning like how people are responding to you, or where to go, and object recognition, and where to drive, and where to move around, and how to like adapt your movement, and like, so it's very similar. But I the dog peeing, y'all, that just gets me every time.
With AI visual ability, Puppy Pie computes object position coordinates and autonomously calibrates its locomotion with the target. Many fascinating applications and scenario can be achieved, such as tracking and kicking ball, line following, climbing stairs,
right, astronomy show?
Puppy Pie's built-in IMU sensor detects its body position and posture in real time. Its controller unit features multiple expansion ports for varieties of sensors and modules add-on, all ready to materialize your creativity. Whether you are a beginner or engineer, Puppy Pie is a high-quality ropes quadruped robot platform for you. Plenty of learning materials and relevant software will be provided for your smooth learning. All our AI programs are open source to accompany you in the expedition toward the world of AI quadruped robot journey. This is Puppy Pie. Your creativity is irreplaceable.
I do like Coffee Rocks that you can buy these, and because the code is open source, that allows you to adapt the code, which is really neat, I think. Get enough that they can lay back and be carried anywhere. Fortuitous. You're not wrong. So Coffee, this was the original version of this. It was called the Mini Cheetah. So that video, the Puppy Pie that you can buy now, is like 3 months old. Like that video, so it's pretty new on the market. But this video is... Hi, Wagnus! Guys, if you're not checking out Wagnus, a legendary streamer, content creator extraordinaire, gamer friend that we met through the Mocha Locos. Guys, please go check out the lovely and amazing Wagnus.
In dreams, one is not tethered by earthly limitations.
Sleep well,
What does that mean?
Come.
Wagnus, we're doing some StarWars Science tonight. So we talked last time. We talked about cloning technology, and we talked about something else. But I'm totally I forgot what the other thing is that we talked about.
This is the way.
And then tonight we're talking about we talked about midichlorians and the science behind how that might work, and now we're also talking about robotics as well. So like how, like comparing and contrasting the robotics in Star Wars to what actually exists in today's world. Welcome on in, my friend. Guys, please go follow Wagnus. Also has a beautiful puppers. If you like dogs, go check out Wagnus. Code has to be pretty solid now. Open source versions of the code do we feel are solid? I doubt. So Pragmatic, I think it's older ones are very much under lock and key, but there's so much open source now. Like Pragmatic, all the AI tracking that I've used for behavioral studies were all open source, and they worked really, really well. So I think more and more the open source coding is quite good. The programming that I use for bioinformatics, so like analysis of sequencing data, is all open source instead of the proprietary one. So definitely very well done components. Love the bots back in episode 1. Did you see, Wagnus, that there was a TV show called Droids back in, I believe, the 80s and the 90s? There was a whole TV show about the droids. Work in academia, which allows access to more info too. Well, so it's all free though, Pragmatic. But yeah, like knowing which ones to have to like look at, that's a good point. Wagnus, I don't know if the VOD is still up for the cloning, but we did go into a lot of cloning tech. It is on the YouTube, where we put up all trimmed down versions of the streams. We remove the raids and the intros and the outros, so you just get the straight up unadulterated science. Yes, it was, Wagnus. Here's a blast from the past. Yep. We actually watched the intro tour at Wagnus. Yeah. Open source learning a curiosity. Otherwise, advanced stuff turns proprietary. Or fortuitous, it's proprietary at first, then gets pulled back into it earlier. Mergle Media, first time chatter. Welcome on in. A fantastic show. I like that they had the original voice actor for 3PO in there. That was a little bit of an extra tidbit of information in there. I really enjoyed. Guys, someone else who's here, I want to go give them a follow as well, is the lovely Perswiddle is in his house. Please go follow them. Whittle is the beautiful woman who does the intro voiceover of the stream. Epoch, sleep well, thank you for the raid!
Tethered by earthly limitations.
What does that mean?
Come.
Epoch, thank you for the raid and sleep well, my friend. Appreciate the heck out of you. I'll see you in the morning. Guys, go check out Whittle, voice actor extraordinaire, also gamer. Again, she does the voice intro for the channel trailer. Please go follow Whittle. You will not be disappointed. All right, let us continue. Coffee, this was, thank you, Epoch. This was the droid that inspired the dog that you can now purchase. This was proprietary. No, the love command is Jen Stinky Cheese, Big Gamey. That is Jen Stinky Cheese. She does the words command. So Pragmatic and Coffee, this tech was proprietary to MIT. They patented it, but then the Raspberry Pi dog, someone else came up with the same code and they made it open source. So that's the competition there. Some people do patent it and it makes it proprietary and it's not available to everyone, and then others will come up with the same code and make it available to everybody. So it's very dependent on these. But this is the original dog robot called the Mini Cheetah. And the biggest thing for it to happen was its jumping ability. That was like the big to do about this. Go. So see, it's very similar. Staying steady, movement, rotation. This is the one that's also being put out into the field as well. Jumping. Right, Murgle? The human interaction is still not ideal, but it can flip over though, which I think the flip over and like the getting back up is really, really cool. The design is really, really cool.
Yeah. Go. Yeah.
I like the mistakes that they show too, because there's so much that they have to go into to identifying all these situations as well. And so fortuitous, actually we do have some robotic prostheses we're going to go into as well. Oh, my mess with the pizza delivery? Maybe.
Go.
But it's cool to see how they've developed over time. And then this is another robot that this kind of felt like to me. Robonaut 2.
Meet Robonaut. NASA's humanoid robot is set to help man explore space. Work on the first Robonaut began in 1997. The idea was to build a humanoid robot that could assist astronauts with tasks where another pair of hands would be helpful.
And it's a beneficial thing, right? Because you have a limited number of humans on the space station. Maybe you need extra help doing various tasks. And so a robot in space makes sense. It also feels extra Star Wars-y good.
Or to venture forth to perform jobs either too dangerous for crew members to risk or too mundane for them to spend time on.
The danger, I feel like, would especially be a beneficial thing to have, like if they need to go out into the space as well. Try to become a shiny, enjoy. Good luck, Alexander. I think that's what that means.
The result was Robonaut 1, or R1, a human-like prototype of a robot that could perform maintenance tasks or be mounted on a set of wheels to explore distant destinations. Through 2006, R1 performed in numerous experiments in a variety of laboratory and...
What's up? Oh yeah, I'll be right back.
Bullet the science guy. Balin the science guy. Balin the science guy.
SciAnts is a partner on Twitch. With lovely wife Lita.
Balin the science guy.
Thank you, Bit Gaming. Thank you, guys. We're gonna finish up this video before I go have some dinner. That's what that was about. Okay, let's get back on R1 and R2.
And field test environments, proving that the concept of a robotic assistant was valid. In 2006, the automotive company General Motors expressed interest in the robotic project and proposed to team up with NASA. A Space Act agreement was signed in 2007 to allow GM and NASA to pool resources and work together on the next generation Robonaut. Robonaut 1 was the first model and has been followed by subsequent models leading up to the current Robonaut 2. The core idea behind the Robonaut series is to have a humanoid machine working alongside astronauts. In February 2010, R2 was unveiled, a faster, more dexterous, more technologically advanced humanoid robot than had ever been seen before. The International Space Station is only the first of R2's possible missions. As R2 technology matures, similar robots could be sent deeper into space to test the system in more extreme thermal and radiation conditions. Someday, R2 could serve as communications, weather, and reconnaissance satellites which have direct benefits on Earth. Robonaut 2 was launched on February 24th, 2011.
Derpington, you're not wrong. How you doing today, friendo? Gyroscopic robots will be easier to manage in low gravity versus on our planet, though. Yeah, for sure, pragmatic. That does make a big difference. No worries, Zulu. Zulu, y'all have a great sleep. Good luck on the Comic-Con. And thank you again for the raid. Give our love to Little Arrow as well. Sleep well.
And was delivered to the International Space Station.
Thank you, Derp. Yeah, we do science almost daily. Tomorrow will be Science News of the Week. We also do science art. We do a lot of fancy pants science things here. Hi, Cannabadano. 6 legs in space. Cannabadana.
So if you're not following science streams, then you have got to change that. You gotta go follow and you be rearranging your day around the dopest streams ever. There's music and there's art and there's science facts. What else do you need for your hearts?
Darth Maul had 6 legs. After he got, cut in half, he had all the robot legs running around. So it's, in space.
NASA's experience with R2 will help them understand its capabilities for possible deep space missions. R2's head houses not its brain, but its vision equipment. R2 has 3 degrees of freedom in its neck, allowing it to look left, right, up, or down. Each arm is approximately 2 feet 8 inches long, giving the R2 a total wingspan of 8 feet. Robonaut.
Yeah, this is on the International Space Station. It's on board now, pragmatic.
R2's hands have 12 degrees of freedom, 4 degrees of freedom in the thumb, 3 degrees of freedom each in the index and middle fingers, and 1 each in the ring and pinky fingers. Each finger has a grasping force of 5 pounds. Behind R2's visor are 4 visible light cameras. 2 provide stereo vision for the robot and its operators, and 2 auxiliary cameras. A 5th infrared camera is housed in the mouth area for depth perception.
So it's cool. You can operate it yourself. So if they're on the space station, they need to go somewhere. Let's say, oxygen levels are low. You can send in this robot, and you can be the one controlling it.
Each arm boasts 7 degrees of freedom and the strength to hold 20 pounds in any pose in Earth's gravity.
No taste yet, Canada.
Here on Earth and at the space station, R2's backpack holds its power conversion system, allowing it basically to be plugged in. On another planetary surface, or on the moon or an asteroid, the backpack would hold the robot's batteries. R2 thinks with its stomach, literally. With its head full of cameras, the only place with enough room for a brain is the robot's torso. R2 operators have several choices for how to control the robot. Station crew members will be able to operate R2 as well as controllers on the ground. However, one of the improvements over the previous Robonaut generation is that R2 doesn't need constant supervision. In anticipation of a future destination in which distance and time delays would make continuous management problematic, R2 was designed to be set to tasks and then carry them through autonomously with periodic status checks.
It could be good though, with like the appearance. I think like the arms are needed because like the way they're operating things, they're just trying to make it more dexterous, and so to have you can control it remotely, and so it's just making it more like a human, like more natural control, especially given how everything in the space station is built for human operating. But you're right, like the head and the torso could be built differently. I think again the reason why it's at head level for all the cameras is so that again if you're operating it remotely it feels more natural, and so maybe then it's just ergonomics of it makes sense to put it in the torso. Not sure.
Mobility options for Robonaut are currently being tested. One was a four-wheeled base, tested during the 2011 RATS, or Research and Technology Studies mission in the Arizona desert. During the past decade, NASA gained significant expertise in building robotic technologies for space applications.
For sure, pragmatic.
NASA's experience with R2 on the space station will help them understand their capabilities for possible deep space missions. These capabilities will help NASA launch a bold new era of space exploration. The next step for robotic capabilities such as R2 would be to explore near-Earth objects, including asteroids and comets, and eventually Mars and Mars moons. The robot will serve as a scout, providing advanced maps and soil samples, and begin work on the infrastructure that astronauts would need. The crew that follows would then be much more prepared for the exploration ahead. Humans and robots exploring our solar system together will provide greater results than either could achieve alone.
They do seem a little bit more archaic. Astronomy shows us a little bit older. So this one's 5 years old versus the flipping robo dog was 4, and I'm betting that the upload date was a little bit older as well. But it has a nice comparison, right, of what we have, and maybe where we're going in terms of the droids and robotics. And I think there's huge potential in all these avenues. Sandro style is definitely more faster than a bipedal. Yeah. But it also accessibility too, Cirque, of like building how you built the station, what can get in and out. That's also an important component. The snake that uses the Archimedes type screw to travel. Yes. Pragmatic. That one is really cool. That one is really, really cool. There's a lot of cool droids out there. I did a little bit of a light cherry picking of some that were, again, we're just tying the sci-fi-ness to the science of Star Wars, and that was kind of the link between the two. So chat, I think that's where we're actually going to wrap it up tonight, because I need to go still have dinner, and it's past